Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, an entitled HOA president despises a farmer who has a gun range on his private property. The homeowner association claims that guns are not allowed, but the farmer is not an HOA member. And if you haven't already, please check out my podcast on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple and others by searching for Ripe Stories. So the first one starts like this. Before I start talking about what happened, I feel the need to address the gun controversy and where I stand on it. It might save me some hate in the comments later. So I live in a state where the gun laws are pretty moderate and people seem to be split down the middle about their views on it. Do I believe that people have the right to own a gun? Yes. But I also believe that guns need regulation to make sure they are trackable and people who are not stable shouldn't get to buy them. Finally, I believe that for certain jobs having a gun for work or protection can be needed. I'm a farmer, and even if I did not enjoy guns and shooting as a hobby, I still would probably want a gun. If a bull I own decides to go crazy and come after me, I want a way to be able to save my own life. I've never needed to actually use it for that, but it's something that I've heard happening to other farmers. I do really enjoy shooting for sport, and on my property, I built a gun range for me and my buddies to practice our aiming and just relax. And yes, I built it within all regulations to make sure that it was both legal and totally safe for myself and the properties around me. The HOA I lived in does not have the same views as I do and thinks guns are horrible and anybody that owns or shoots one should be in jail. Basically, the most extreme end of the spectrum for wanting guns to be banned. I say that I live in the HOA, but I actually don't belong to it since my farm outdates them and I cannot be forced into anything. Even in the name, the H is for home, not farm. These three women that all seem to run the HOA hate me all because of my shooting range and tried constantly for me to get rid of it. They even called the cops once on me for it, and instead of arresting me, they praised me for having one of the safest at-home gun ranges they had ever seen. This thing even had sidewalls in case a bullet went flying off in the wrong direction. The HOA was pissed that I did not get arrested for that and tried to go back to asking me to remove it like nothing happened. I'm just gonna call all three of these women HOA president because I cannot actually remember which one was the actual president. They all looked similar to me and I gave no crap about any of them equally anyway. HOA president, we wanted to come by and ask you again to remove the gun range. Me, you think I'm gonna do anything you ask after you sent the cops after me? HOA president, you should have been arrested anyway. The HOA rules are clear that guns are illegal and you are not only owning one, but flaunting it. Me, actually I own 3 guns and I have every right in the world to have them. My farm might be in the middle of an HOA, but we all know that I'm not a member of it. It'll also tell you that while at first I found you only slightly annoying, I'm now slowly losing my patience. Leave me alone about my guns or the next person to call the cops will be me for harassment. So once a month I take a ride to somewhere where I do a lot of trade. And by the way, OP was kind of doxing himself there, so I had to censor that. Anyway, sometimes I don't actually end up selling or buying anything, while other times I find great deals on livestock. I even got a used tracker there at a really good price. So that means once a month I'm gone from my farm basically the entire day, and the HOA took full advantage of that fact. I knew it was them too because I had cameras installed because of my chickens. The egg production was less and I wanted to see if one of the chickens was eating the other's eggs, which can happen strangely enough. My gun range is in view with that camera and I saw most of it. They had come onto my property with somebody riding a bulldozer. I found out later in court that they used the fact that no guns in the HOA meant it was legal to destroy my range in their mind. His company also got him in huge trouble, but back to the moment at hand. So they had this guy destroy my gun range to the point that it was unusable, and I saw it all when I got back. I don't know if I was upset or furious when I saw the damage and the tapes, but I knew one thing for sure. I was gonna make sure that the HOA was not gonna be around for much longer. I wanted to dig them into the ground and place a headstone that said RIP HOA. I don't know why this keeps happening, but people think that farmers don't have any money. I have no idea if they saw movies where farmers were poor or something, but they think that I didn't have a penny to my name. As if things like the animals and machines and food did not all require a decent amount of money to begin with. So I did hire a lawyer, and he told me that with the tape showing what they did, I should not have any problems beating them in court. When they got the notice that they were being sued, they came over to the farm and laughed at me, trying to explain that the HOA had a great lawyer that could make anything I tried to say make me look bad instead. I didn't speak to them because they might have been fishing for me to give away something we were gonna use against them. It took a long while for us to get to court, and in the meantime I was really missing my gun range. It was the favorite of all my friends too, so we tried to rebuild it the best we could in the meantime, making sure to keep a close eye so it didn't get bulldozed a second time. The HOA idiot might be dumb enough to do the same illegal thing twice. When we finally did get to court, I showed the proof that the HOA president was the one directing the man in the bulldozer to destroy my gun range. She couldn't lie and say that she wasn't there or didn't do it. Instead, she started to claim that while I was not an HOA member, I still needed to follow their rules about the guns. Her reasoning might be the funniest thing I've ever heard, so I'm gonna just let it speak for itself. HOA president: while the farm might not be HOA property, the noise from the guns goes into HOA-owned air. And yeah, she was claiming the air was protected under the HOA bylaws, so I was not allowed to shoot my guns outside. I was biting my cheeks so hard to not laugh that it ended up bleeding a little bit. She could have tried anything else for a defense, like claiming safety concerns, for example. Instead, she went right for the dumb excuse that lost her side all credibility. I was asking for the money to repair my gun range back to the state it was before, for the HOA to be disbanded for breaking laws, and finally, for the HOA president herself to be charged with destruction of property. I got all three of those things, and she was found guilty and sent to prison for destruction of my property. Again, with that I should know which of those three women were the president, but I swear they were triplets or clones or something. Either way, without an HOA, everybody was now free to own guns, and I told the neighbors that they could ask to use my gun range whenever they wanted. And yeah, ripe stars, I know that the topic of guns is kind of a divisive issue, but in the end, no matter where you stand on this, you gotta give props to the farmer for beating the HOA and having the law on his side. I will always respect the victory of a farmer. Also, I feel like no matter what it is about, standing up for your rights is super important. Either way, the next one is titled "Entitled Neighbor Karen Destroys My Fence and Claims That She Owns Half of My Property." So this one starts like this. Moving into my new house was supposed to be an exciting new chapter in my life. I had just gotten married, and my wife and I were eager to start building our lives together in this charming little neighborhood. Most of the residents seemed friendly and welcoming when we first arrived. Well, all except for one woman who lived in the house next door. The first sign of trouble arose on the very day we moved in. As the moving truck pulled up with all our belongings, this nosy middle-aged lady came marching over from next door. Without even introducing herself, she just stood there with her arms crossed, glaring at us. "You better not be making too much noise," she snapped. "I won't tolerate any loud music or parties going on next door." Taken aback by her rude behavior right off the bat, I simply muttered that we would just be unloading some boxes and furniture. "See that you keep it down," she huffed before stomping back to her house. My wife and I exchanged bemused glances. Who was this crabby woman? Little did we know then that this was just a hint of the nightmare neighbor we would soon come to know as Karen. Over the next few weeks, I tried my best to avoid Karen whenever I could. If I saw her watering her lawn, I would dash into the house. If she was getting her mail, I would wait in the car until she went back inside. Her glares and disapproved frowns were enough to ruin my day. But one afternoon, the confrontation I had been dreading finally happened. I was doing some gardening out in my front yard when I heard the screech of an opening screen door. Karen marched straight towards me, wagging her finger. "Just what do you think you're doing?" she demanded. I blinked at her, baffled. Gardening? "Don't play dumb with me," she yelled. "You are clearly trying to claim part of my yard." Now I was totally confused. "What are you talking about?" She jabbed her finger at the fence separating our two front yards. "That fence is on my property line. You have no right to be planting things on my side." I tried to explain calmly that I was not planting anything on her side of the fence, but she refused to listen. "I knew you would be trouble ever since you moved in," she raved. "People like you don't belong in this neighborhood." People like me? I was stunned by her openly racist comment about my ethnicity, but before I could respond, she stormed off, shouting over her shoulder that she would be calling the cops. Sure enough, a few minutes later, a squad car pulled up in front of my house. I tried to explain to the officer that I had not done anything wrong, but Karen kept shrieking that I was trying to steal her land. No matter what I said, the officer believed her over me. "Look, I think this is all just a misunderstanding," the officer said, "but I have to take her accusation seriously, so I suggest you stay on your own property from now on." I couldn't believe it. This crazy woman had fabricated some story about me trespassing, and the cops had simply taken her word for it. Over the next few weeks, Karen became more and more unbearable. Every time I went into my backyard, she would come out yelling that I was on her property. She even destroyed the fence separating our yards, claiming it was hers so she could do whatever she wanted with it. One day I came home to find a work crew in my backyard cutting down the big oak tree back there. When I ran out yelling for them to stop, the foreman waved a piece of paper and said that he had been hired by the owner of the property to remove the tree. I quickly figured out that Karen must have pulled another scam, claiming to own part of my yard. That oak tree had huge sentimental value for my wife and I. We had even hung a swing from it. Watching it get cut down crushed me. I felt so violated and powerless. That is when I decided enough was enough. I installed security cameras covering my entire property line. If Karen was gonna keep playing this game, I was gonna collect evidence against her. Sure enough, 2 days later I checked the footage and saw Karen sneaking into my backyard with a pair of clippers. She started snipping away at my prized rose bushes that I had planted near the property line. I raced outside and yelled at her to stop. She had the audacity to claim she was pruning her rose bushes on her property. When I told her I had video proof of what she was doing, she slapped me across the face. I immediately called the cops and showed them the footage of Karen trespassing and destroying my garden. But as soon as the officers approached her, she burst into tears and accused me of assaulting her. The police tried to tell me that they had to follow up on her accusation, even though I was the one who called them. Once again, they seemed to take her word over mine. She continued wailing about me being a threat and insisted that they arrest me. But I remembered the camera pointed at my front door. I showed the officers footage of Karen slapping me first before I ever touched her. The officers reviewed the video and finally had no choice but to admit that Karen was at fault here. They asked if I wanted to press charges for trespassing and destruction of property. I have to admit, it felt pretty good watching Karen scream and curse as the handcuffs locked around her wrists. She gave me a look of absolute hatred as the police took her away. I just smiled and waved. At long last, Karen had faced real consequences for her harassment. And I had evidence on multiple tapes to get a restraining order against her as well. I realized then that I refused to be intimidated by a bully. After a long legal battle, Karen was sentenced to 6 months in prison for her antics. The judge also ruled that the property line was exactly where I said it was based on the surveys. A peaceful couple bought Karen's old house and I finally got to enjoy my home. So the moral of the story is, don't let entitled Karens walk all over you, stand up for yourself and use every legal option available. The justice system does still work sometimes. Karen thought she could bully me off my own land and call the cops with wild stories, but in the end her lies caught up with her. I just wish I could have seen the look on her face when she had to trade her house for a tiny jail cell. And yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed this story, but I wanna still remind you that if you wanna have early access to my new videos and even access to exclusive stories that maybe won't be posted on YouTube, then please check out my podcast on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, soon also Google Podcasts, Amazon and others, by searching for Ripe Stories and you will find me. It would mean the world to me if you could also listen to my stories there. Either way, the next one is titled Am I the Jerk Here? My husband, 33, and I, 30 female, are selling our house that we purchased 8 years ago. We currently have it listed for 35k more than what we purchased it for due to all the renovations and upgrades we put into it. Everything on the inside is brand new and was done in the last year and a half with special order carpet, furnace, hot water tank and kitchen backslash going in just 2 months ago. The only thing we did not add to the home was a garage, detached as we chose to have a large backyard instead, although the electrical work is in place as well as the permits should whoever purchases it decide to build one. We do have 2 parking stalls behind our house though on our property, not street parking. Our realtor messaged us with a viewing request at 5:30 to 6, which we agreed to, so we packed our kids up as well as our dog and then left. We got back home at 6:30 only to find them still on our house. I apologized and instantly went back outside while my husband took the kids to the park. Now we are working with a realtor and not selling independently as we don't want to deal with the people viewing our homes personally. While I was outside waiting for them to finish up, this woman and her husband came out to ask me questions like what the cost for a garage would be. I told them an approximate price and she starts laughing, asking me how we could list our house so high when they would still have to pay 20k or more for a garage. I told her we made the decision to put that kind of money to upgrade the interior of our house as a garage was never a need for us. She then got annoyed and began saying she would not pay more than 320k for our house, which was less than what we purchased it for. I told her I would never agree to that this conversation was over and that if she had any more questions then her realtor could reach out to mine. She began arguing with me again, so I snapped and asked why she was wasting everyone's time as our listing clearly stated there was no garage, but that I would gladly put one in, but would be bumping up my listing by another 30k. She freaked out and said that it would put our place out of her price range, so I told her not to bother looking at places priced above her means and to get off my property. She left crying because of how rude I was to her, and her husband called me a witch. My husband thinks I could have ended the conversation more eloquently, but I feel like she crossed the line by questioning me in the first place. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? And yeah, dear ripe stars, please let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that OP acted like an a-hole here and is potentially the a-hole or not? Someone on Reddit said, not the a-hole. The whole, she wouldn't pay more than 320k for our house is the kind of thing you say to your realtor, not the sellers. You did not say anything untruthful or even rude, honestly. It's sad that she cannot afford your house. Not really. She's just being ridiculous about it. Comment number 2, her husband is an a-hole. You chose realtor-based sale for a reason, and it was rude to stay past the allotted time. And now, ripe stars, we have an update to the story, and it reads like this. No, my realtor was not on site, as it's not common practice where I live to have the seller's realtor there unless they are the ones personally doing the showing. An interested buyer realtor reaches out to him to request a showing, which is arranged upon our approval, and he then provides them with the code to the lockbox on our front door. Their realtor was there initially as I saw him when I had come home. I then left to our back alley with my dog while my husband took the kids across the street to the park. I'm assuming they had left all together, and when their realtor drove off they came around to the back to start questioning me. For those of you asking why I came home when I should have looked for their cars in my driveway, the truth is I have no driveway. It's all street parking and the cars in front of my house belong to my neighbors. We came back 30 minutes after the viewing was supposed to end and my realtor had received no notification that they were there past the appointed time. And the next one is titled, Am I the a-hole for asking my neighbors to keep the volume down when they have family and friends over? I know that this already seems like a fairly straightforward question, but I feel there are a few things that could skew the situation in either direction. For context, I'm a senior college student swimming in the midst of finals right now. I have admittedly been having a tough time with the amount of coursework I've been keeping up with. I have 3 studios, 2 other classes and an incomplete from last semester that I've been working on concurrently. I think that situational stress, anxiety and depression, I see a therapist so please don't think I'm trying to pull those diagnoses out of my ass, are clouding my judgment, so I wanted to ask a wider audience about the situation. I live in an apartment complex and several months ago the neighbors directly adjacent to us moved out after rent got hiked up. A new neighbor of course moved in, but I honestly cannot stand her and the family she has over constantly. It seems that her and all of her adult friends and family smoke, so there is constantly somebody hacking up a lung immediately outside of my door, which I tolerate since that's something technically out of their control. However, another consequence of them all being smokers is that they are all constantly gathering in front of our doors. Their door is situated very close to mine and having conversations that are typically so loud that I can clearly hear them through my door. They have also started bringing over young children who constantly yell and have tantrums. The noise happens most often from around 6 PM to 11/12 PM, give or take a few hours. There have been 3 separate occasions where I have asked this woman's guests to quiet down. I think that it's the fact that the people who are causing the noise don't actually live there that irritates me. The latest occurrence was yesterday morning at 9:30 AM when I was studying and having breakfast before classes. I was drinking coffee when somebody started pounding on their door, which of course sounds like pounding on my door. The knocking was so loud and violent that it sounded like police having a drug bust. I opened my door and a high school age girl was standing at their door, presumably a friend of the neighbor's daughter. I opened the door and told her to stop and closed it again to continue my breakfast. That night, when I came back from my classes, the neighbor posted a note on her door with a fat red warning sign on the top. I unfortunately don't have a picture, but the basic gist of the sign is that she is old and sick. She is maybe in her mid-40s to mid-50s, but since she smokes it is hard to tell, and that she has family over a lot because of that. She also wrote that curfew is at 10 PM, which makes me think she believes her and her family have the right to be as loud as they want until then. She ended the note saying that anybody who had an issue should go to management, which I am tempted to do. The note irritates me because I had the courtesy of talking to her directly in person about the issue, and she retorted with a passive-aggressive note that was pretty obviously directed towards me, since I believe I'm the only one who has confronted her about the noise. I know that noise from neighbors is a part of living in an apartment situation, but I also believe that it is their responsibility to be respectful neighbors, which includes any family or friends that happen to be visiting as well. Noise from other people is a major stressor for me, and I have no way to escape from their noise as it carries as far as the bedroom at times. I didn't think I was being particularly rude when asking her and her family friends to quiet down, except in the last incident I was definitely cranky. But her note on the door makes me feel like I may be wrong. And a user in the comments said, that is pretty unacceptable behavior on their part, living in an apartment setting. Everyone sucks here, your neighbor is a bellend, but unless you have noise rules for your apartment that say otherwise, 8 to 21 o'clock seems fair game to live. If they had contractors in working on the place drilling and the like, would you complain in that period? And if you would, how could you ever expect to get work done yourself? However, for all the slamming and banging outside that, then your neighbor and her guests are scum. If they were settling a small child and you were making that amount of noise, then they would be pissed. Therefore, your annoyance is justified. Use the rules of your building to your advantage and inform your building management company. If they take no action, take to your local authority regarding noise bylaws in your area and what they cover. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.